Welcome to Story North's presentation of Books and Bars, the Twin Cities' favorite and best book club. This episode features a discussion of Station 11, Emily St. John Mandel's literary post-apocalyptic vision of Middle America, and was recorded before a live studio audience at Republic Calhoun Square in Minneapolis, Minnesota on July 14th, 2015. Your host tonight is Jeff Kamen.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Books and Bars. You guys ready? Everybody ready? Feeling it? Everybody have a seat? I like it. That was a nice welcoming smatter of applause. Come on by. It felt good. How you guys doing tonight? Who's never been to Books and Bars before? We want to welcome you first. Welcome. Anyone else? Okay, welcome, guys. The way it works is it's pretty simple. My name is Jeff. Jeff Kamen, that is. This is Books and Bars. Yeah, shh, I like that. Those are people that have been here before. They're like, shh. This is when someone's talking on the mic, you guys listen. It's a really awesome way it works. Actually, give everyone the same sort of respect. It's really great. When the person on the mic is talking, try to listen to what they're saying, and then we react to it. It's like improv. We listen and react, okay? And then we're like, I totally disagree with Eric because Eric told us his name. Because he raised his hand, he said, Eric, and he said, I thought Station 11 was amazing. It's the best book I've read this year. I never would have read it if it wasn't for Books and Bars. Thanks for picking it. Where's this Eric, by the way? I got to meet this guy. That was some awesome comments. Okay, I made that part up. But I bet one of you will have something so insightful to say like that. And so let's give that person the floor. I'm currently standing on a balance beam right now, so if you see any jittering here, just go with it. It's a tight room. We're going to make it work. We're here at Republic, voted one of the top 100 beer bars in America. So I hope that you guys try all of the fine beers that they have here. And tonight, for the first time, we are recording a podcast. So all your friends that can't come to Books and Bars, you could tell them, well, you could listen to the podcast. And it's going to be part of a podcast called Story North. That's going to be on the Alive and Social Network, okay? So this is our first attempt at recording it, and we'll be going weekly in the fall. But Books and Bars will be a part of that. So hopefully your insight and your expertise on books will make it onto the World Wide Web, and everyone will hear about it, right?
Right.
Tell us your name.
Emily.
Emily, what did you think of tonight's book?
I loved it. I really did.
What did you love? What did you love about it?
I just really liked the characters, and I liked the situation that they were in, the plot, I guess. I thought it was really compelling, and it kept my interest. I read it in like 2 days.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a fast read for me also. I also loved it. But you know what? We're going to hear everyone's opinions tonight after I tell you a little bit about Emily St. John Mandel, our author. She was born in 1979 in British Columbia, Canada. She studied contemporary dance at the School of Toronto Dance Theatre and lived briefly in Montreal before relocating to New York. This is her fourth novel. Her three previous novels were crime fiction, and she felt like she was getting pigeonholed as a crime writer and didn't only want to write crime books. So she wanted to try something different with this one. She also writes for the website The Millions, if anyone reads that, and she lives in New York City with her husband. She has said what she was going for with this book was this idea of this traveling symphony. In fact, that was the original title of the book, but she thought it was too twee and too precious and decided not to name it that. I'd be interested to hear what you think of that. So she wanted to write about a traveling Shakespeare theater company and really focus on that. And then this sort of post-apocalyptic aspect of it got added later, and this idea of the flu. So she has said her elevator pitch for this story is a traveling Shakespeare company, living in a world where 99% of us have been wiped out by the flu. She has called this a love letter to the extraordinary world in which we live. She thinks there are a great many things about this world that are completely appalling, but we're surrounded by a level of technology and infrastructure that at any other point in human history would have been considered absolutely miraculous. So we live and work in these rooms that are all lit up by electricity. We cross continents and oceans in hours instead of days or months. Our trash is taken away when we leave it at the curb. Speaking to someone on the far side of the world is as simple as entering a sequence of numbers into a handheld device. These are all remarkable things that we too easily take for granted. And so one way for her to write about the modern world was to take it all away, consider its absence. which is why she set this in the post-apocalyptic landscape. And so this is a love letter in the form of a requiem. What do you guys think about that? Did it feel like a love letter to you? Did you think about things you would miss if you were in this situation? Could you imagine it? Could you imagine 99% of us being gone? I mean, you'd have more room in this room, right? You'd be able to move around a bit more.
Excuse me. Yes. First time I've been here.
Welcome. Tell us your name.
Harris. That was a very interesting quote because I've been reading a lot of post-apocalyptic novels lately, and I thought this was the one that was really captured the feeling of the contemporary world the best, I thought. And one of the themes that I noticed that really came through in this one was the feeling of nostalgia and kind of ideas of the past being presented through the idea of what the post-apocalyptic future would be. And that it kind of reminded me of, I saw recently the play at the Guthrie, Mr. Burns, and there's a lot of parallels between the two of them that I think we could discuss a little bit. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great point. Did anyone see that play, Mr. Burns, the post-apocalyptic world, something like this? We talked about this a bit at our last discussion in St. Paul, and I find it really interesting because in the original drafts of this, Emily St. John Mandel actually had the Traveling Symphony performing episodes of Seinfeld and episodes of How I Met Your Mother. And this was in first drafts of this, and she pared it down and thought, you know what would really survive? Like, where would we want to go in this futuristic world? Like, what are the things that would last? And she decided to focus on, like, great works of classical music and Shakespeare as something that people would try to protect. Not to say that they wouldn't. I mean, I think it's a great idea that, like, maybe the contest episode of Seinfeld, I'm out, would last forever, because we'll always be doing that. I mean, in a world where 99% of us are dead, there'd probably be more of that, right? If you know what I'm talking about, if you've seen that episode of Seinfeld. If not, I believe it's on Hulu now. But I find it interesting that, yes, that play, and I didn't see it, but I've read a bunch about it, and I wish I would have seen it. I'd love to hear if anyone else who saw the Mr. Burns play and the Guthrie and wants to compare or contrast it with what we read here. I saw a few hands. Did anyone else see it?
Hi, I'm Roxy, and we saw the play, and I had read the book first, and the whole time I'm like, wow, it's just like Station 11. And what's funny is the author of the play considered writing about Seinfeld also. So, but basically it was, in this afterworld, it's like, what do you talk about? And I kind of feel like people might talk about The Simpsons more than Shakespeare, but you never know, right? You can hope that it's Shakespeare.
Roxy, if you had a chance to save either, I don't know, the first 10 seasons of The Simpsons on Blu-ray or the collected works of Shakespeare in like a leather-bound edition, you can only fit one of these in the museum of
right. Well, I would do probably
end.
Shakespeare because I like some.
No one here is going to admit, right, that they would quit The Simpsons, but many of us would.
Yeah, no.
It's like, well, wait a minute. Is there a working Blu-ray player or not?
No,
is it streaming or hold on a second?
This is a room totally full of, English majors and librarians and stuff. We're all going for Shakespeare. But it was really, the play was awesome, and I feel like it was for a younger crowd. And we had some older folks leave right next to us during during intermission. And
they didn't know who Mr. Burns was.
No, I didn't think they I don't know. They didn't get the gravity of the situation, or it felt like a really odd play for the Guthrie. But I guess we should probably move on because not everybody's talked about that.
That's okay. But I think what it brings up is an interesting point. Harris, you mentioned you've been reading a lot of post-apocalyptic stories, right?
Yes, and the parallel theme in a lot of them was just nostalgia. Like people thinking about, like, Adventure Time is a post-apocalyptic theme, and that's all about nostalgia.
Absolutely, it's mathematical. It's so cool. I think that this is something that I've been fascinated with, this idea of why we are reading so many of these. I think the idea is that you weren't even necessarily trying to read post-apocalyptic, but that's all that's available. I mean, there's a high percentage. It's either a story of bondage with the gray in the title, or it's, and I'm sure they'll be post-apocalyptic next when they reboot that series. It'll be a futuristic landscape where all there is kinky sex. We have that to look forward to for a book club discussion. But there's a lot of these stories, and I'm fascinated in why we think that is and why they're so popular now. There's a few theories, and I talked about a few of them before, and I didn't even get a chance to bring them all up. But I would love to hear maybe why you guys think, first, if you liked it, and why this kind of stuff is resonating with us now.
Well, I think it's because there's so much of our lives is controlled by, electricity and the internet. And it's become so ingrained in us. But a lot of people don't really understand how it all works. I mean, does anybody understand how the internet works? And so I think there's sort of like a fragility there.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jen, and I don't know that it's new. I guess I remember being force-fed so much like utopian fiction when I was in middle school, like 1984 and Brave New World, and so now instead of the loss of your freedom, it's loss of electricity and technology. But I feel like there have been always post-apocalyptic books, and The Giver, and I mean, it seems like in school that's all they ever make you read is what happens at the end of the world.
Well, there's always a scare, right? It's what's the latest scare? What are we afraid of? Who's threatening us?
Hi, I'm Sandy, and I think that there have been so many wars around the world, and people think of the apocalypse, and now we have ISIS and ISIL or whatever, and I think that people actually have their minds going there, especially the writers, and so we just follow.
Thanks. I see a fresh hand over here. Tell us your name.
My name's Bob. I would actually go the opposite direction. I think it's because everything is so comfortable. Like the situation, the conversation turning toward wealth inequality, things like that. Why aren't people rioting over this great wealth inequality? It's because more or less people are comfortable. There isn't the same level of destitution and despair, and so why not write about total destruction?
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Judy, and I love the book and also read it, in 2 days. I mean, just consumed it. But as someone who's worked in respiratory care for 40 years, I retired a year ago, but in a trauma hospital, acute care, and has been on a team that ramped up for H1N1, SARS, Ebola. The reason I loved it is because this story is not new. It's been told a million times. And the description of the virus and the beauty of the virus, how amazing it is in its adaptability, its ability to survive in so many environments. It has no discrimination, and so it will, glom on to whoever it wants to. But I saw this as a very real, believable story. And if it doesn't make you think that it is real, I don't know what would, because we've dealt with this. Ebola, everybody kind of went nutsy over it. Well, they should have, in terms of thinking about this will happen. This will happen on a bigger scale at some point. It will happen.
I would say that, we've gone through, we used to be afraid of, being bombed or maybe it's somewhat still robots or artificial intelligence taking over. And now it seems like it's a contagion. It's going to be SARS. It's going to be some sort of disease that starts, a swine flu, something that, and then just goes like that. And it seems like this is the most believable or the most plausible sort of route that it could go. I mean, this isn't that different than, say, like what we're seeing in zombie fiction. I mean, in the sense of that's a disease, right? That it just reanimates corpses, but it's still it's a disease.
But it's closer than even that. Look at what just happened with the bird flu and the turkey population of Minnesota. I mean, it absolutely wiped it out, right? I mean, it wiped it out in the blink of an eye.
You seem really excited and in awe of this disease. Did you hear the way she was talking about? Like, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's gonna wipe us all out. And she's like, I am so down. She got like a T-shirt that's like, Ebola is my savior. No, I get it. I love it. You were appreciating it on a level though that was like almost like you're not releasing a vial or anything. Is she like? Please make sure that she isn't. Oh, I like it. I like you're in awe of the power of it though. But I want to know ways to protect from it. I hope you have the antidote on you. Do we have another hand over here?
I'm not quite sure what I'm going to say, but what she just said.
Tell us the antidote. That's all we want to know now.
I guess.
If anyone wants to stand right here, by the way, there's like a wind machine. It's great.
I was told not to talk about this tonight, but I live with the world coming to an end every day, 24/7. And I just figure if you live your life and you're kind and you're good and the world comes to an end tomorrow, what's wrong with that? We're dead, we're gone.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, hold on. You're
okay.
like, if I don't hold the mic right, if no one hears me, we're dead, we're gone. It doesn't matter because...
I read the book and I kind of...
Well, first of all, awesome that she read the book. Am I right, you guys? Who else? Give yourselves, whoever read the book, clap for yourselves.
Then clap
Okay,
again.
now hold on. Who didn't read the book?
But no, I was going to
rare.
say I read it a second time because...
Oh, that's extra claps. Extra claps. A slow clap. Who read it 3 times? How about, did anyone read it and listen to the audiobook? That's me.
The second time around, I liked the fact, I really appreciated the people who just kind of accepted it. We're glad they were still alive, and they didn't really know what tomorrow was going to be, but they went on.
But we don't. None of us do, right?
Exactly.
So you're saying it's just a metaphor
why
for...
spend your life worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow when who knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
It's a great attitude. It's a great way to live your life. I like it. No? No? Okay. Yeah, I like everyone. No one is raising their hand, but everyone's pointing to somebody else. Like, give it to this person. I know they want it. Hold on, I saw this hand first.
I'm Caitlin. And I find that we always end up planning sort of, well, what would happen, if the apocalypse comes. We have a running joke that we'll run to my future brother-in-law's because we feel like he'd be really useful to have if the apocalypse happens.
I played paintball this weekend. Those are people that you want around when the apocalypse is going to happen because they're ready for it, and they think it's really funny if it's the first time you've played paintball, believe me. And if I was a less humble man, I would take off my shirt and show you my back because I have the welts to show it from the people that are the people that are going to survive the apocalypse, or the people that are practicing paintball every weekend apparently.
I also just really enjoyed her writing style, and I felt she was very evocative and just kind of created a believable world.
I did too. It did feel, there was a debate last time about whether this is even science fiction, and I'm wondering, and not that it necessarily matters, but were you reading this feeling like, oh, I'm reading sci-fi right now, or did it just feel like this is just, the world in a different time from now? I mean, because it's set in the future, does that automatically make it sci-fi?
I think it's soft sci-fi as opposed to The Martian's hard sci-fi.
Okay.
Or just speculative fiction. In terms of post-apocalyptic fiction, I think it's interesting because it's been around forever, right? Two of the ones that I think of historically are A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter J. Miller Jr. and also Ridley Walker by Russell Hoban, and those are about post-apocalypses after nuclear things, which were much more of a fear on the beach, absolutely. And so we've just shifted to what the fear is. And I also see it as just a literary device, that an author takes something, limits it to highlight a certain aspect. And so what I saw was highlighting here was what happens when we take the technology away. And then one of her answers was the traveling troupe of musicians and plays as well.
the world here became much more local, right? It all became very localized. Even and we only see a few band of travelers, and everyone wants news from what anyone else is doing, but they're not able to find out. I think one of the things that what you said brought up to me was, we're talking about. There's always been the anxiety or what we're worried about, what's going to end us. That's one of the things with these type of narratives. It was touched on a little bit before, this idea of, I think one of the main things now is this, let's start over. This idea of economic inequality. And so this would can I get a blank slate? And if we strip it all away, let me, let the 1% deal with, the rest of us, that sort of thing, and put us all on the same ground. But I think that one of the things also that you said, Kristen, that it reminds me of is this idea of there's no more frontiers, though, of where do you go in life, and how we used to be able to go to the Wild West or go to Alaska even or go to Australia. There's nowhere left to go except for outer space, basically, that hasn't been already mapped, and you can't really find a new frontier where we live except by going into the future in some way, right? To imagine, well, what if it's here, but it's a totally different world, and this is the frontier of now we have to deal with it and kind of starting over from there. I don't know. I'm fascinated by why these things are so successful. I'm drawn to them, some more than others. I thought that this one was more believable. I did like her writing style, and I thought that it made it there was a very human aspect to it, and this idea of I definitely felt the love letter for the Earth, and made me appreciate it. It reminded me of on a simpler level, one of my favorite comedians, Louis C.K., and how he talks about how we live in such an amazing time, but yet we complain when a call fails and this call has to go up to a satellite, back to another one, and shoot back down, and if it doesn't happen in 3 seconds, we're like, oh, this is the worst service ever, that sort of a thing, as opposed to just being amazed that we have the entire knowledge of the world, a search away in our fingertips.
My name is Courtney, and one of the things that I think the author did really well was kind of she made it believable for why a lot of the characters survived. I think she gave a good example with the main guy who got kind of tipped off early and was able to stock up and hold up in his brother's apartment for a while, and even how the airport was able, somehow there were the signs that came up that said, nope, turn around, quarantine, it's here too. But one of my favorite parts of the book was that it talked about what happened 20 years after everything fell. We were talking about, zombie apocalypse stuff before, and that's always in the, it's happening right now, there's still gasoline, there's still, all this stuff, but this is okay, we've fast forward past all that, and now kind of how do we resettle?
My name is Heidi. I was just going to segue from something Kristen said about science fiction and post-apocalyptic narratives and dystopias. Margaret Atwood kind of famously divides the sci-fi into kind of 2 categories. One, sort of like the Jules Verne category of sci-fi, where you take something that's based in reality and you just tweak it enough that it becomes a little more kind of hyper-real, but it's based in reality. And then that kind of becomes, the sci-fi part of it. And then there's the whole H.G. Wells kind of strand, which is with the people from outer space and invading, aliens and that kind of thing, and more like The Martian. And I think that this one definitely falls into that kind of more that Jules Verne kind of tradition, where you're taking what we all kind of know, and you're putting something in there with an epidemic, and then fast forwarding to what impact that had. The other comment I wanted to make about this book is I love how it's as much a meditation on loss as it is kind of a storytelling about this post-apocalyptic future. I mean, and even down to just little things, like the last cup of coffee, or the second last cup of coffee, I believe it was, and the last orange. I mean, just those sort of little everyday things that we take for granted, but it helps us to focus on them.
What would you put in the Museum of Civilization?
I loved the Museum of Civilization. I thought it was a great idea. Well, I guess it would be like whatever was on my person at the time when I was stranded that I thought was sort of like something that needed to be preserved. And I loved how some of those things were gadgets for people. I think I carry notebooks with me that I use for journaling or travel journals, or I think I would put that in there because, it's sort of like the comic books that went in there too, where it's just telling the story of something from the before.
Okay. Yeah, you'll get it in a second. I hear Jeff's making eyes at me over here. When that plays back on the podcast, it's going to be weird. And my wife's like, I wasn't there, but Jeff's making eyes at her. What? It's for the mic. I want to speak to the earlier point, what the author said about why she placed it when she did, and this idea of, because somebody said, oh, well, this was kind of like The Walking Dead, but without the zombies, so it was boring. But it was intentionally her point to see where we were 20 years from now, to remove ourselves from the mayhem. It's not a particularly sustainable way of life over the long haul. I do touch briefly on the horror in Station 11, but I feel that territory of post-apocalyptic horror has been very thoroughly covered by other writers, and I wasn't interested in spending too much time there. For me, it was more interesting to write about what comes next, which is why the post-apocalyptic sections are set 20 years after the collapse, after the initial nightmare of societal collapse. What does the world look like 20 years down the line when a new culture has begun to emerge? That was what I found myself most interested in writing about. And, one of the things that I'm wondering about is, we've all read the whole thing, so, I mean, there will be spoilers here, but, would it be 20 years before somebody maybe invented electricity again? Or is that just the only one that's in their eye shot? Which also plays into another thing that the author said, is she would put a globe in the Museum of Civilization because of how localized they became, to let everyone remember that even though we might only see people a few miles from us, there is still all of this out there if we can ever get to it. And who knows what's out there. So maybe someone else found electricity before, and this is the first time that the characters we're following see it. Interested in your thoughts on that and maybe what would happen then.
I'm Brian. So that's one of the things I thought was really cool about the book, was that it wasn't just the phones, the internet, the cable TV, and all that stuff that disappeared. It was ammunition, right? Some of these people had guns, but did they have bullets anymore? No one knew how to make bullets anymore. They're gasoline, right? They were pushing or horse-drawn.
So this made me question the Mad Max series, because she said in her research she found that, gas basically isn't usable after 3 years sitting dormant. Mm-hmm. So what is that gas that they're using in Fury Road? Great movie, by the way.
That's a good point. Good point. And
Wait, you know what this reminds me of, Brian? Do you remember this? There was a really funny comedy sketch called B- Time Traveler, and it was Janine Garofalo and Ben Stiller, and it was from the Ben Stiller Show. And the idea is, what if we invented time travel, but we didn't know what to do with it because we didn't really learn anything, and this idea of you can't capitalize on it. So, but now flash forward, and I never learned how to make these things for myself, right? I don't know how to make electricity. I don't know how to make ammunition. I have to find someone, hopefully that's alive, that does, and buddy up with them in some way.
But the cool thing, so she killed off 99% of the people. All that knowledge is gone. So no one knows how to refine gas anymore.
Is it all gone though? Isn't there someone in that 1.1% that?
But in that one local area that she's talking about, it seems that everybody. Well, and so there were two other things about the book. One, wow, that thought just disappeared. It was. It did. It totally went away.
Should we come back to you?
Nah, I'd put my Beatles LPs in the vinyl, in the.
You'd put your vinyl Beatle LPs in the. Okay, is there a working turntable? Is there a Victrola that we're going to crank up?
It wouldn't
You
matter.
say you want a revolution. Too fast, slow it down.
If you were going to put your Seinfeld DVDs in there, what's going to power those? So,
Hey, I didn't vote for the Seinfeld.
okay, well, whatever. Damn, I totally forgot what.
We'll come back to you.
It's
We'll
the
come back.
concussion. It's the concussion.
I'm Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
Thanks for giving me the mic, Jeff. I wanted to say the one thing that I did have to complain about the book. I've read a lot of post-apocalyptic, from The Stand on, and there's a lot of there's a lot of different ways that people react. The one thing I would say is that this group did not seem to be very active about re-engaging with technology. Now, again, what you said, it was a very little sliver of humanity along, the Great Lakes, and they pretty much stayed away from population centers, and I can see why there may not have been, but it didn't seem like anybody was trying at all, and that is, and she kind of leaves with that, so obviously it's still a part of the idea. But anyway, that was my one complaint. I loved the rest of it. I thought it was a well done mixture of past and present and future, and that's all I got to say.
You would be more interested in trying to reinitiate technology. And,
Yes.
and it felt like these people were not
Well,
as much.
Because this is one of those perfect storms. All the people died, but all the stuff stays. It's not like in The Road where everything's ruined and the people are going to die. Everything is still out there, and we're just idiots, and we don't try to start up manufacturing again or refining.
So-
the books haven't gone away. It's not like people can't learn from existing materials. Speaking as a librarian,
What do we think the author's trying to say then by this? By this is, if this is the way she writes us 20 years from now, all of the information is still there, or do we just don't know what to do with it, or we don't care? What do you think she's trying to say with this?
In the discussion at the table, we've been saying that chaos will disrupt a lot of that. And there were definitely 3 years, they talked about 3 years basically of chaos, and then after that it kind of got, so
Some people call that middle school.
Yeah, exactly. But then after that, these were smart people. These were not, people who didn't have education and training and couldn't have figured that out. So either they weren't so involved about replacing the things that they had lost, and they were interested in building a new kind of world, which I think a lot of people were. I thought one of the interesting things that she did that others hadn't, because she had this long time since the people who had grown up never knowing the previous world, did they have any sense of loss? And I think the one character, Jivan, who ended up getting married and having children, I thought his was kind of a tale of he's got a good life. He doesn't need to have what came before replaced, brought back. He may not have a choice, but...
Yeah. Is there... I see some new hands, but I'm going to throw this out there, too. Start thinking about this. Is there a main character to this book? And I'm wondering who you think it might be.
This kind of answers that, I guess.
Yeah.
My name's Caitlin, and still going on kind of the apocalyptic kind of idea. I didn't read this as an apocalyptic type of book.
Oh, I thought you were just going to say, I didn't read this.
No, I read
and then
it.
drop the mic and
I read
walk
it.
out.
And the thing that I really tuned into in this book that I thought was really beautiful was how very intertwined everyone was. And I think that for me, I don't see this as an end of the world book at all. I don't think that there was an end, and I think that's the point. I think that it makes a lot more sense to read this knowing that she initially wrote it with the idea of a traveling symphony, because I think it makes a lot more sense if you read this like you would a requiem or a symphonic piece, where you have all of these different movements and you have these different pieces that start with a theme, and they start with kind of those major chord sets or those major type of melodies and patterns. You have Arthur and you have Kirsten who kind of follow through every other character and every other movement, and they sort of roll over each other, and they pick up a little bit of another, and they go on to the next movement, and they change the theme a little bit, but they still retain the old one. And then you have the patterns of movements where you repeat the patterns, and you have the codas, and you have kind of the same ending points where you started. And I think that it makes a lot more sense where you kind of see these kind of rollovers and these different movements. And what I thought was really interesting was that, and I didn't even think about this at all, that no one was really trying to fight the fact that the world changed, that everyone died, that, no one had that shit hit the fan chaos theory of, holy crap, we're all up in arms, what do we do now? We're all pretty much going to die as the end of the world. No one had that. And to be fair, a lot of the people the younger kind of generations didn't really remember, I guess. But, I think the point is, the point was that it wasn't that sense of end. And one thing I thought was really interesting was when Kirsten and August got lost in the woods, it highlighted or when they lost Charlie, there was always, for the symphony, there was always that plan. We always have the destination. We always know the destination. They repeat it together. They're always together. And there's always that destination. And the destination changes, and how you get there changes. And when the symphony got lost, they just took a different route. But there's always that destination. And, in that sense for me, I couldn't read this as an apocalyptic because there's never an end. There's always that rollover. There's always the carryover of the different theme and the different movement.
A lot of great things in there. I'm trying to imagine what was going on in your head while you were reading it. Did you hear the music? I mean, are you a very musical person? It sounded like, I love the way that you described it. It sounded very, very musical. I like looking at it in that way. And also this idea that I got from what you said of this, maybe what she's trying to say is we need to return to more interconnectedness in the sense of that we do all need each other. And we think that we're, so connected now with all the technology, but when you strip that away, you realize that, we're probably less connected. It's like this classic, we're friends on Facebook, but we don't really know each other, right? We just see each other's pictures and we go, oh, you were in Kansas City, I guess, right?
Well,
but
yeah, and it's so interesting, too, I think, when you look at...
I don't mean us specifically. I mean anyone I don't mean me and you, okay? We know each other. Side conversation off mic back here. In my head, I said, don't say Kansas City. It's going to offend somebody. I should have said Des Moines. Okay. I use real examples from my life.
I think it was... I'm going to jump in and finish
Please
my thought
do.
here. I think it was... going on that idea, it's really interesting, too, when you look at the relationship between Tyler and Kirsten, because, they should... it's the protagonist and the antagonist, and, they're so much closer than 6 degrees of connectivity, and you see them at the end really truly overlap. They're the two people that are really the glue holding everything together, and they're the two people with the comic books. They're connected to every other person. It's kind of, it really is going back to that idea of connectivity, and I don't know that it's so much of a sense of we've lost all our connectivity, but it's a just kind of we need to re-recognize it. And before, made a comment about how, trying to think back to, you said, when you're talking about how reading it, in school you read all of these books of utopian books where, everyone goes off and runs into the woods, into the freedom, and, our biggest fear is, that, we have people running wild, and now it's kind of that sense of we need that running wild, we need that, total loss of world to kind of just see how natural everything just flows and ebbs and rolls over into each other again.
Caitlin, do you want to sit at the pro-virus table? It sounded like at the end there. You were like, we need this, people. Who's with me? We're all taking the virus now, right?
Not really. I am all for just... the whole, sitting down and just talking rather than
like
killing
this?
each other.
This is good.
This is great.
This is good.
More book clubs. We don't need more
face
virus.
To face.
We need more book clubs.
More book clubs.
I think
is that the
book clubs,
solution?
that's really
a traveling book club? What do you guys
Exactly.
think? Should we get on a bus? Are you cool if we all wear white robes, though, and sing Polyphonic Spree stuff? I keep trying to be a cult leader, you guys. You guys got to get on board. Go ahead. Tell us your name.
My name is Carolyn, and I'm sorry, but I didn't finish the book. I did read it, though, and so I was confused as how to answer. I read part of it. But I'm on, page 204, so it's obviously okay. I know some things will be spoiled, but I'm still going to finish it because I do really love it. And I just wanted to say, I guess touch on a couple things now because so many things have been said, but quickly. I think in some ways with the complaint earlier, I don't know if we know that no one's trying to reconnect to the internet, but I kind of like how, to me, it felt really realistic in it being like 20 years after the whole flu had gone down, because at that point there isn't as much people freaking out trying to save everything. At that point you just know where you're at. And I think it was really realistic in how there was sort of just a stagnation. And I really especially love the line when it's Kirsten, I think, she's talking about how maybe the species just was supposed to end and how so many species had ended before, and to her that felt kind of peaceful. Because I remember when I had taken an astronomy class a couple years ago, and my astronomy teacher just brought up one day that most species do end at some point. And I was like, you know what? Maybe that is kind of cool. We just will have a natural ending at some point.
Okay, we got another for the virus table. I'm really no. I'm just kidding. It sounded like okay. So is Kirsten maybe, in your estimation, the main character? If there is one, I don't know that there is one here.
I don't think there is one.
I find it interesting. I feel that from what I've read, Mandel has definitely identified with Miranda as one of her favorite characters. And the way she wrote Miranda, she said she wrote a lot of herself into Miranda. And I would love to also touch on some other characters in the comic book. But I see this entire table had their hands up. Who's representing at this table?
Hi, everybody. I haven't heard anything that you've said all night. So if I repeat anything, well, I'm not sorry. He should be sorry. I really want to talk about the Prophet because I thought he was a really interesting piece of the book because
I will be your prophet. I am more than willing. What? Come on. Whose favorite character was the Prophet? I was just kidding. I was just totally kidding, you guys.
I just found him really interesting because I thought he was going to be kind of more pivotal to the end of the book. I thought there was going to be like a big showdown between the non-nut jobs who are just trying to survive and the nut job who's trying to spread his folklore or whatever. So I was kind of hoping for something more to happen with him, and then he just kind of dies.
Well, don't we get, did anyone get a little bit of sympathy, though, once we find out who he is, and then we see maybe the connection between Miranda and Kirsten and the Prophet, all because of, these few artifacts that remain and how they are all bonded by this comic book with two copies in existence, and one reads it one way, one reads it another, and I don't know. I couldn't hate him as a character. I think there was some sympathy once you find out who he is and maybe what his circumstances were. He was doing terrible things, but I guess I didn't expect a whiz-bang total conclusion to that. There was,
it just
deaths,
seemed like there was enough conflict with him, and that he was kind of chasing the traveling symphony and trying to kill their people and everything, and they're just like, hey, leave us alone. We're not doing anything. We're just trying to live our lives just like you. But he was the one that was chasing them down, so I really had no sympathy for him at the end when he got shot in the face. Dick.
You wanted him to get shot more than once in the face.
Yeah. I wanted him to empty the clip on him.
More on the Prophet, or anything else you got?
I completely agree with your opinion that I really thought that the Prophet was going to go somewhere, and when it didn't, I was a bit disappointed. And we've also been talking a lot about how we've all read post-apocalyptic novels, and once we sort of get used to what's going to happen, I knew that once the Prophet died, I expected that to be the big conflict, and then it wasn't, and I was kind of like, oh. And then the only moment that I was waiting for was for the lights to come on. In all of these books, in all of these movies, the light comes on, the couple gets together, the bad guy dies or whatever. And while I was hoping that the Prophet died and hoping that the lights came on, I did feel that the Prophet dying in such a sort of meh kind of way, and then the lights coming on as we predicted they would, did sort of devalue the book a little bit for me because I wanted it. It was predictable. I was reading it all day. I'm unemployed. But then the lights came on, and it was like, oh, Okay, that's it. So yes, I was expecting the prophet to do something, because that, I think, is what would have made it sort of have more oomph. We know the lights are going to come on. We know the lights are going to come on. We want the prophet to do something.
And I was hoping that the prophet would get to Severn City Airport and with the Traveling Symphony, and they were going to open the LaGuardia plane, and that was going to be like a big reveal for or like a big plot twist at the end. That was like, as they were moving closer and closer to the airport, I was like, oh man, I really hope this happens. And then it kind of didn't, which was a little disappointing.
If we didn't feel, though, that the author set a tone or a pace to not expect that. I guess I didn't expect that sort of all of a sudden now she's going to show the excitement or chaos that would have ensued in those first 3 years because of the fact that she was setting it so far in the future. I mean, I think for her the big reveal was that there is going to be the hope of, now we know electricity, so we're on the right path. We're going to join more people together, and now that we got electricity, we can start doing more of these other modern conveniences again, and that's the way to go. And I think that she wanted us to feel something, not that like he was a big bad and that it's all, because she has taken a lot of flack for, he's the overtly religious character and he's the big bad in this story, and she has brought up the fact that no, there is this other, remember the other, what's her friend's name, who prays for all of the dead people, that shows the positive side of religion in the sense that it isn't all just one-sided, because in a way these characters maybe could be looked at, we're still maybe looking for if there's a main one or not, but of archetypes of a sort, right? Like in a survivalist, it almost felt like, we have like the scientist, we have the classic Gilligan's Island batch, and then we have like a Dungeons and Dragons crew, and then it's like everything you need, except they needed a Thomas Edison, they needed a better inventor, and maybe by the end they're going to find that. I get that. I think up top, there was maybe a setup for more action in that sense, or more of like a giant reveal. But then as we go along, I guess I wasn't expecting that, and for me, it was okay on that sense. But you sound like you wanted more zombies. And I get that. No, I'm just kidding. You're unemployed, so your standards are much higher because, this is free time you're using on this book. I'm just kidding.
I didn't want more zombies, just wanted something that made it a little more distinctive. To me, it wasn't different enough from post-apocalyptic novels to really sort of love it.
Hi, I'm Tom. I was also disappointed by the book a little bit because I wanted more Shakespeare. What I really liked about the Mr. Burns play is it was about the Simpsons, and then it was about weird Simpsons, and then it was totally took off in a different direction. And I wish this book had focused more on the present or the future part of the book and taken out Arthur completely. I didn't care for his storyline.
But if you remove Arthur, you remove a lot of the Shakespeare, I think, because I think what we see in Arthur is a King Lear type character, right? And I think it is definitely worth talking about the Shakespearean aspect of this. One of the things the author was talking about when she was researching this was, Shakespeare was writing this in a time where there was the plague, okay? And the plague took his son, one of his kids. And so Shakespeare was the third born to his parents, but the first to survive infancy. 4 of his siblings died young. His son Hamnet died at 11 and left behind a twin. Plague closed the theaters again and again, death flickering over the landscape. So any other connections to Shakespeare, Shakespearean motifs of the theme, or why do we think Arthur seemed to be such a pivotal character for so many, and the Shakespearean play and the Shakespearean troupe? Any thoughts on that? Any more Shakespeare for Tom? Their hands went down when I said that. They're like, well, I don't know Tom, and I don't know. Who still wants to talk about Shakespeare? Tom, you scared them.
I actually think Shakespeare was the main character. In terms of what survives, Shakespeare survives. So I enjoyed it because I think you find at the end, what's important. It's love, it's family, it's friends, it's community, it's Shakespeare, and that's what survives, not the cell phones. And I thought that the prophet was a really interesting physical embodiment of the flu. Like when the flu hits, we can't control it. We don't know why it happens. We don't know why it takes. And the prophet tried to control everything, right? And he always sought a reason for everything happening, and in the end, a kid blew his face off. So I think he was the physical manifestation of our desire for control, which we don't really have. But what's going to survive an apocalypse? Shakespeare.
And the Beatles. Shakespeare and the Beatles. Nintendo. Anyone saving Nintendo?
I agree with a lot of the people who were kind of disappointed by the lack of more of the Prophet. I think there was too much Arthur and not enough Tyler. I mean, I agree how pivotal Arthur was, but we didn't need to know all of his backstory about his wives because he died before the New World started. And then we get his kid, and we know hardly anything about him. And before we learn why he thinks what he does, or we have the battle between this is fate and this is luck, he's shot in the face and it's done. That was the part that was disappointing, I thought, to me.
Thanks.
Well, first of all, I did my thesis on Shakespeare, so I appreciate
the
Shakespeare.
Mic drop coming up.
But I actually, my comment is not related to
A
that.
slow clap followed by a mic drop. All right, this better be good. You opened with, I did my thesis on Shakespeare.
Oh, crap,
and
I'm screwed
your
now.
turn.
No, I actually wanted to talk about something else, but
what?
I wanted to appreciate the Shakespeare.
You know what they say, you just waste your money on higher education. You don't even use your thesis when it's asked of you. I'm just kidding.
I could talk about adaptations on Scream in the modern stage if you want me to for hours. I actually wrote on King Lear a little bit, so there's that.
Okay.
But what I wanted to talk about is that some of the people over here and I think over there were talking about reading a lot of post-apocalyptic, I have trouble saying it too, literature, and I haven't, and the ones I have focused solely on the after. And so to me, that this book focused on the before was really appealing to me. I really loved that we got the transition and then we got the context of some of the characters before, whereas the Hunger Games, Divergent, whatever, like some of the ones I've read don't focus on the before. You don't get that. So I really liked that. So I don't know if anyone else felt that way. And then the other thing I just wanted to say, we were talking about people that were needed, and over here we decided that they needed a Mark Watney. They needed an engineer.
Everyone could use a Mark Watney.
They needed a Mark Watney.
From The Martian, yeah.
Yeah.
We all could.
And maybe potatoes, I don't know.
So that kind of ties into what I was thinking, which is that the closest book I can think of is actually a play, which is No Exit. So in that case, everybody's dead and they're doing the flashbacks, or they're actually flashing back to the current state. But it's much closer to that than actual science fiction. I like what someone said before, where the apocalypse is more a literary device, because honestly, electricity is really easy to come by. There are lots of economic reasons that it isn't as easy as you might think, but ultimately electricity kind of just exists. And so it was really more of a character study than an actual science fiction book to me. And that, again, is why there wasn't any particular sort of rising conflict and denouement. It was just sort of, this is how life is now for this locality.
So the author said that she had mapped it all out and really looked at. She went through a lot of different drafts and had it sort of like, we've seen Jeevan here, and then we don't see Jeevan again until this page. Is that too long? Are we going to remember? And in some ways, I'm wondering if that worked for you, or if there were characters that kind of fell by the wayside, or if there were ones that you think she could have tied up tighter. I mean, it had such a scope and a breadth that it were times where you were locked into a story, and then we didn't come back to, maybe what was happening there, but we saw, a flashback or a flash forward, that sort of a thing. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, kind of work. I'll make it work. Yeah, I really liked the Arthur part, and kind of going off of that kind of post-apocalyptic idea as a literary device, and what makes this, I think, so different as a post end of the world book is it does focus on that before, and it does use all these characterizations, and for me, I didn't feel like we needed Arthur, or I didn't feel like we needed less Arthur and more Tyler, because I felt like we could understand Tyler. We could understand all the other characters through Arthur. And I loved that they used the past and the pre-apocalyptic world to explain how all of these characters lined up and intertwined, and explaining the post-apocalyptic world by reference to the pre-apocalyptic world. And I enjoyed Arthur's, I guess, storyline and development. And I think that, through that, you understand why Tyler turned out the way he did and why he, just the lack of father, having that kind of, the birthday scene or the kind of the phone call where he's saying, well, why weren't you here for my birthday kind of thing. I think that's, just as telling as if we had Tyler narrate, the entire thing himself. And you derailed me, so I don't really remember what exactly I was going to say when I was waiting, but.
Brian, she's suffering from your concussion. It happens, right? We jump around a lot. It's tough.
It's the virus.
You're going to have to go back and listen to the podcast to make sense of where this went. And then you'll be like, now I know. And then you'll comment. And you'll be like, this is what I meant to say a couple weeks ago. It'll be good.
Okay, Harris here again.
Hi, Harris.
Couple of quick things, I guess. I, too, am a librarian. Going back a little bit. I always, after reading this book, I was thinking that we should have some sort of oath to, as librarians, to go to your nearest library after some
that
sort of
should be the
disaster.
meeting place?
Yes.
I like it.
Try to keep all of the, materials for rebuilding the world safe so that, when things calm down, we can, start up like Minneapolis. Everyone go to Minneapolis Central Library. Start a new, city state there. Like, remember when we had electricity? Come to Minneapolis. Things are going good.
I think that's a great place to go, but you know that 99.9% of the people are going to go to Walmart first. And then the people that are going to live, the 0.1, us, will be at the library. It'll be great.
Yes, yes. Did you have something?
Lee. My name's Lee. So
Hi, Lee.
I wanted to go back to.
Hi, Lee. Can you hold the mic just a little closer
Okay.
so we can hear you? Yeah, hold it like this. Like, you should have been gone. Knowing how Lee made me feel. Go, Lee.
I think I won't hold it exactly like that, but I wanted to go back to talking about why this book is science fiction, because to me, I've read Margaret Atwood books, and this seemed a lot more plausible as a future than anything that she's written, and yet in libraries, if you go there, you'll see that she's in the general fiction section, whereas this is in the science fiction section. So I was wondering if anyone had any thoughts on that.
So Margaret Atwood is in science fiction, and this is in general fiction? Or okay.
Well, I guess this is not at all meant as a criticism or a guilt trip, but it's interesting that we all think this is science fiction.
Do we all? Who doesn't think it's science fiction?
Okay. I don't think it's science fiction.
A lot of people don't.
It's interesting because a good deal of people still live like this today. No phones, no cell phones, no running water. Not meant as a guilt trip. Let's all just drink our beer. But it is an interesting thought that we have a privilege of saying, wow, isn't this strange? No Wi-Fi. That's a sort of foreign concept to lots of people.
Okay, fair enough.
Heidi again. About Arthur, and I think even more so his friend Clark. I like them both as characters because I kind of saw them both at a point in their life where they're midlife. They're almost sort of post-midlife, right? And I saw kind of the parallel between the world before and the world after, and how many of kind of the meditations that Arthur and Clark have about their lives before and their lives now. And there was this really great passage on page 163 where Clark is kind of talking about his job with 360. And he's talking with this young woman, Dahlia, and says, I'm talking about these people who've ended up in one life instead of another, and they are just so disappointed. Do you know what I mean? They've done what's expected of them. They want to do something different, but it's impossible now. There's a mortgage, kids, whatever. They're trapped. And that's also kind of a parallel for the post-apocalyptic or the post-epidemic world.
Right, because these are people who would benefit from a clean slate, starting over again. Right now, we get a chance. We're past midlife.
Exactly.
We're stuck because of all these things. But
Right.
can't I just do it again? Can't they
They get a
horse
chance to start over.
Yeah.
And Clark, in particular, I mean, he's this sort of like consultant who goes around trying to change executives. And
I
in
love
this-
I love the corporate speak when he talks about how
that's really
THX
hilarious.
and let me circle back and shoot you an email. I'm currently writing my my year-end review, and I just feel like including as much
It's
of that
all
stuff
full
as
of that,
possible,
isn't it?
because that's
It's
only going to
just all
help,
full of
right? If
that
I'm like,
kind
let me
of stuff.
circle back to that one.
Absolutely. And I love how when he gets a second chance, he taps into being the curator of the Museum of Civilization. So he gets that. He gets to be untrapped from.
I don't know. I'm
his
on
life.
the virus side now. I want this apocalypse. I'm feeling good about it. I don't want to write the rest of my review. I don't like that.
Pros and
this whole new
virus
fiscal
cons.
year I'm dealing with. Let me jump in on this. Yeah. Who's got a horse? I saw your hand. Bring it down. Bring it down.
All right. I'm Michael. This is my first time back in 2 years after moving back.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Is this what? Tell me. Just even if it's not true, we can edit this part out. This is why you came back to the Twin Cities, right?
This is way better than any book club in Seattle. So suck
Awesome.
it, Seattle.
Awesome. Oh, Seattle, man.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, especially to the woman who did her thesis in Shakespeare. I'm sorry, but it's Simpsons 100 times over. 100 times over. Also, a group of D&D 12 bards is the worst party ever. So you need a fighter, you need a healer, and they didn't have that. I'm sorry. There's 6 people who got that joke. Awesome. I would have expected more like 30% with this crowd, but I'll take it.
This isn't Seattle, buddy.
Yeah, exactly, I guess. So, I mean, it's a 333-page book about 6 characters, so I don't think it's surprising that there's some, I thought, pretty underdeveloped characters. I thought the best developed characters were the people that died. So, Miranda was one of my favorites, and I feel like you really kind of got to know her motivations and, kind of her... You see her as she first comes into Toronto and then goes through the skepticism of LA and then kind of, I thought the scene with her in the Southeast Asia was incredible. Her death scene was like the most poetic in the book. And then Arthur. I mean, Arthur, of course, he doesn't die because of the flu, but he was the most developed character because we see all of his connections to the world. And then, I thought the main, kind of what I took away from this, and, this is just kind of a thought, something I think a lot about, is determinism versus free will or chaos, right? So, in the book, when Clark escapes, they kind of, she goes through, well, he didn't touch this counter in the airport, and then miraculously all these people weren't infected on his flight, and she very says, like, cause and effect. This is why Clark survived, right? Whereas with, and she's not answering that question, but and this gets to, I forget his name, Harris, or the guy that traveled with Kirsten. What's it? Harris, right? August. How he talks about the infinite world of possibilities, right? So that maybe it's, there's so many infinite realms of possibilities and parallel universes that inevitably there's going to be one where there's one character that ties all these people together. I thought that was interesting. I'm a big opponent of determinism, so of course I hate the prophet. I think everything happens for a reason is the most bullshit thing you can say. Unless it's followed up with, it's called cause and effect, and things happen. And then just to the point after I get off my soapbox, I think we have to remember that why there isn't manufacturing is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and there aren't. At least we're not exposed to like large scale settlements, right? So I think when you talk about you might have this very specialized training, and I would imagine a lot of us do, or these very specific experiences. But if you ask me to like make a light bulb, or I don't know, like take care of a horse, I wouldn't know what the hell I was doing. And so unless you have like enough of a population to deal with agriculture, you're just never going to get past the hunter-gatherer. I mean, that's just based on sociology, right? So I think 20 years down the road to start that is pretty realistic. And then I mean, I echo a lot of the sentiments that I thought this was a very realistic depiction of what a serious pandemic flu could look like. I mean, the incubation time is ridiculously fast, and I would argue that it's a non-perfect virus because it's going to extinguish itself because there will be no natural reservoir because everyone who gets exposed to it dies. But anyway, so those are just a few of my thoughts.
Excellent point. I'm glad you bring up the hierarchy of needs because I think it is a good reminder of maybe keeping with the realistic aspect of this, and maybe it would be that element if they found someone else who had done it. I mean, maybe someone else did it already somewhere else, but they were so concerned with so many other things they needed first. I think it's a great point.
Well, it focuses on people who that's not their. You got the guy who wanted to help people, being the doctor in South Carolina. You got the folks who were actors or musicians, and so they're going to spread art, and they're the only ones doing it, so they can survive. So you just don't. I mean, they didn't follow a virologist or something, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. And speaking of the second chances, I mean, the doctor is a former. He's paparazzi. I mean, this guy is someone who was, just like living off of other people's fame, and he hated what he was doing, and does a complete turnaround before this all happens, and then he ends up in a pretty good situation. We had a hand here. We're finally getting back to. Good to see you.
My name is Amy, and your first original question was, what do you think you'd miss the most? And I didn't spend any time thinking about that, but I did try to decide which I would like better. And while I was reading the before or after, and while I was reading it, I had 14 things that I couldn't get done at work, and I had to check my emails, and I was getting all these phone calls, and I had to order all this stuff, and I had all these things coming up, and I thought, God, if I could just live in the post-apocalyptic world, this would be so much better.
Sit at the virus table with us.
Right. However, I was trying to decide which was better, having all those emails to check and all the things going on and being able to come to a happy hour whenever I wanted, or washing my clothes in a sink. So I really had a hard time deciding. It depended on the day. And would I want to live in an airport? I mean, I don't even want to use my chair as a flotation device. That's disgusting, and they're living there. So, but when I get really busy, I think, life could be simpler. Although I'd have to learn to milk a cow and pick up eggs or something. So, staple sheets to make a wall because I need a break from people. But that's what I spent time on, is which one would have been harder. And I couldn't decide. Went back and forth. I flip-flopped.
All right. Thanks for sharing.
So this is going back quite a ways because we're the little sad table back here.
Hi, sad table. We love the sad table.
But I actually did think that the book was very realistic, and like a lot of people in here seem to have. I've read a lot of post-apocalyptic literature, and I felt like a lot of it tends to go over the top. I'm actually thinking of one specifically that I read back in the fall that just bothered me because it started out kind of like this with, you've got the people who are just struggling day to day trying to make things just work in this new world with none of the amenities that they were used to. And then it gets into this whole big to-do of like drug trafficking and just all sorts of weird, complicated side plot that I was like, oh, well, this is too much now. But this one, I think, was the most realistic because I think it makes sense that the people who were used to how things had been, they're the ones who had the harder time adjusting. And then you get the kids who, well, they just grow up in that world. The one who shoots the prophet makes the comment, well, this is just what we do. This is just what we do. Like, I think he says it 3 or 4 times over the course of about 6 pages of this is just what we do. We've always done this. I started learning how to hunt people when I was 5 years old. This is just what we do. That I think that makes a lot of sense, that if you don't know any different and are born into that world, that, yeah, everything wouldn't seem that normal. You would be the 11-year-old who freaks out when at school you learn that things used to be so different. People, like now we look at it and think it's crazy that back in the day people's life expectancy was 50 years old and today it's 85. Like that's a huge difference. And now we've got this world where that would be just as jarring to be like, oh, wait, we used to live this long, that I think it did a really good job keeping that all together and keeping it, how people's reactions actually would be. And then on an also related note, I just read a book called Spillover recently, which is a nonfiction one about how the next global pandemic will be the result of a virus. So having just read that like 3 weeks ago and then reading this, I was like, oh my God, too close to home. Like this is too real, can't handle it.
I'm picturing August. All of us are wearing hazmat suits here.
Where's the covers? Okay, I thought I was going to be starting a whole new topic, but she kind of touched on it. They keep kind of going back to, do we teach these children how it
Yeah,
used to
I'm
be
interested.
or not?
Thanks for
There's
bringing that
whole,
up.
Do we teach history? Don't we teach history? How much?
What do you
how
think?
Do we do it?
Does it benefit to know like things? Well, see, we've never had that, right? We've only in our lifetimes been moving forward, so we've never been able to say things used to be better 20 years ago. We had these things and we don't have them anymore. So, can you imagine if you were in that position 20 years from now? Let's say things are worse. We don't have things that we have now. Does it benefit to know what we once had that we don't have anymore, or is it better to just move forward? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, and I don't know if I agree with you better or worse. I think making a value judgment on what you have when you have it, it's like it is what it is.
Can you hold the mic just a little closer?
Okay, sorry.
Hold
It
like
is
this.
what it is. It's
Hold it
not
like this.
better
Look,
or worse.
Hold it like this. Come on.
It
You can
just
do it.
is.
Well, it's not okay. Then it is what? What is it then? So what would you do? Would you teach what we used to have, or would you not dwell on that?
I think it would be important, just like it is now when you're teaching, for kids to know, for everybody to know what possibilities are. And if you don't bother with, this was possible, it might still be possible. I think you lose that quality of imagination that's supposed to be nurtured by education. So, that sounded kind of like, I don't know, pedantic or whatever, but I thought it was interesting that was even a question, like, should we teach what used to be? Should we teach what happened? I can't imagine not letting people know what the used to be is. So that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did bring it up. So we had a fresh hand here. Before I get to you, let's hear from.
Well, I would probably ultimately say, or I would agree that we should teach what happened, because I think history is very important. I can't help but wonder if telling people how it used to be would actually restrict their imaginations by saying, this is how it used to be, therefore implying, we need to copy this. These are the things that we need back, instead of just seeing where their imaginations of what kind of technologies they can develop, just letting it go wild. I wonder what new could be developed, what new could be discovered.
Yeah, I didn't actually see much of a point to the continuation of the old society. The novel seemed strangely nihilistic to me, actually, because the two characters who seem to be at the height of their being at the end of it are all dead. So Arthur has this great realization that this is what life should be, heart attack, dead. Miranda finishes her great work, and then that's the accomplishment, and dies very nice on a beach. It's cool. That's a good place to die. Everyone else is just kind of...
Could it be argued that,
doing
Jeevan maybe has a better life, and he's come to some realization. He's now a doctor, family man. He's happy in his town.
Just kind of existence and going and not striving anymore. So
Well, I think he changed, though. Remember, he was one of these characters who, he didn't like being paparazzi, and now he is the doctor and an important, family man in a small town.
But he's not striving. He's just doing what he knows at this point.
Oh,
He's
you're
just kinda
belittling
keeping
the
that
family
on.
experience, my friend.
And so...
Are we not striving to have a family?
I don't know if performing Shakespeare from the characters for Deliverance really is all that worthwhile. They're playing the banjo, and you're like, but listen to this great art. Well, it was great for a different time. and then somewhere off in the background you just kind of hear the.
So you would argue that How I Met Your Mother would have played better in that situation.
Well, The Simpsons, you know. So the continuation of the old society seems superfluous.
Okay.
Put away the lights. Put away the Shakespeare.
Put it
It's
away,
gone.
move forward.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Who hasn't had a chance yet? I'd love to hear anyone who hasn't had a chance to talk, and also what was your takeaway
I have
from the
something
story?
to respond
someone's
to.
look
Sorry,
at that.
you moved on a little too
There's
quickly.
like mics coming out of. Awesome.
I
Go
just want to
ahead.
respond to the D&D comment earlier. I think the crowd is a little bit more diverse than just 12 bards. Like maybe they've leveled up halfway and they've started on maybe a fighter. So I'm just saying that there might be some multi-class aspects in there, and that should be recognized.
Oh, okay. All right. The gauntlet has been thrown down. I like it. Okay, we had a hand over here. And anyone else who had a chance yet, or anyone else who wants to give us what your takeaway was from this book?
I just want to say quick about whether or not we should teach history. That's not a question. I mean, try to keep people from telling everybody what their life's been like. I mean, it's not an option to keep everything secret. I mean, human nature is to tell stories, tell about your life. So you can decide, I won't teach it in school, but you can't keep this old world a secret. I mean, what are you going to change people? That no parent is going to say, well, back in my day, we rode, a bus to school downhill with air conditioning and Wi-Fi.
And this, they would be backwards exaggerating, right? In my day. Yeah, they had a rickshaw with Wi-Fi. Okay, I like that. Stories are human nature. You can't keep them down.
I'm Sarah Jane, and I thought a lot about this idea of, like recreating and starting over and that kind of thing. And part of it was, do we do better saying, those people that don't know anything, you think back to all the big inventions. They started with what if? What if? Do we do better with that, or do we better with, I want to recreate what I had before? And so I don't know. Do the younger people, are they the ones? Yeah, they've got this. I mean, just like when we go to a museum and we see the old plows and we see the old butter churns and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's interesting and stuff. But we go beyond that, and do we go beyond it because it's the what if, or I want what I had? So I don't know.
Well, we did go back to vinyl, so who knows what we might go back to.
Hi, my name is Beverly, and one of the interesting themes that I found in the book was just, like what are the limitations of just, being human, and what is technology going to do to that? I mean, is it really, kind of expanding people's reach, or is it more isolating? And we were just kind of talking about this like in the lunchroom at work the other day, because I was saying, we were talking, but usually people are just in there on their tablets.
Oh, you know what?
And their
I almost took a
laptops.
picture. When I came into the mall today, there were 4 young women all sitting around a circle table at each other. None of them were looking or talking to each other. They were all just looking at their device. And I was like, I'm going to be a creeper, but I was like going up the escalator. I was like, I could just take an overhead shot of this. It would be so perfect for,
But I mean, that's what I was saying. I said, even 5 years ago, the lunchroom table was covered with magazines and newspapers, and people were grabbing, getting stuff to read while they eat, and people were talking and stuff. And we almost never do that anymore.
Well, we
Like,
share
people
what we read
come-
online, though, right? I mean, we're reading the headlines online, and we're sharing it.
I don't know. I work in a lab, and like people are on their laptops reading scientific papers, and like then people don't talk because they don't want to. Yeah, they don't want to like interrupt somebody. They're working. You know what I mean? And so like graduate students will come and go. You don't even know what their names are, because they don't kind of like engage. Everybody's just isolated. They bring their own little world with them when they have their laptop or their tablet, and they
do you
just
want to
stay
be a
in
part of their world?
Yeah. No.
You want to sing it with me now?
I wasn't listening till you were done.
You weren't listening to the classic animated film?
So you see this Shakespeare troupe going around, and like they're really interacting with the audience. Like everybody in that town comes to see them because they're like the only, and they'll all talk about the performance. But like if you go back to the pre-world, like everybody's sitting watching that Shakespeare play, and he's dying of a heart attack on stage, and only one person gets up. You know what I mean? Because we're just so used to the spectacle. It's such a just like a passive participation in the world. You take your own little world with you wherever you go. You don't, go to a performance or go to work and really interact with people. You know what I mean? You just are having an experience that you take back home.
Are you trying, though, and they're not interacting back with you? I mean, it takes all of us, right? So, I mean, are you just looking and saying they're not letting us in? Or, I mean, I don't know. I know what you mean. I mean, there's times where you think, well, someone else will, someone collapses. Oh, someone else will take care of that if there's a lot of people around. Maybe
who's
you don't
the expert?
Do it, but,
wait for...
well, you're afraid of a lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
but I mean, I think it's realizing that what you said is absolutely true, but then also knowing that, and then the next time you feel that, then be the one to be like, swat that phone out of their hand and be like, did you see this in the newspaper?
We did talk in the lunchroom so that nobody could concentrate. Everybody should close their laptops after that.
You should invite them to book club.
All
I'm
right.
serious. Invite them to book club. Get here earlier, though, because there wouldn't be a place to sit. But invite them. We'll talk to them. Bring them in. That'll be a very friendly thing to do. I know what you mean. I'm torn between it, though, because I promised us after the last discussion that I will not walk around the streets looking at a screen. You know what I mean? Like, I will.
You'll get hit by a car.
I did say, sometimes in St. Paul it's pretty boring, though, and I know the streets so well, and I know that nothing's going to hit me but a tumbleweed, that I can just look at my screen and I'm okay after a certain hour. But I said I promised St. Paul that I would look, because I said maybe it'll be you guys that are out there and we can talk and we can say something to each other. And I've tried, and I'm looking around and I just don't see the people yet. But they show up. They show up when we do Books and Bars, at least. So I don't know. I think we all have to kind of realize that and come. I think it's a good reminder that maybe we are getting too involved in our own sort of technology in our own worlds and thinking that we're connected, but we're not. But let's step it out. Are you guys laughing now because I just keep talking? There's a lot of good hands, and I tagged her. She's next, and I saw Tony, and there's a lot. I got only got two mics, and one big mouth that usually is on one of them. Go ahead, Tony.
So I'm Tony, and let's get back to superfluous characters. So Jivan, the guy at the beginning, so he did...
Jeevan. He sounds like a character from an Elton John song from the 70s. Jeevan. I don't know why. Yeah, Levon, Jeevan.
Right.
There you go.
That guy. So he doesn't save Arthur at the beginning. And then we hear all about him, and I'm all ready for them to bring him back into the fold. Like, he's going to have this interaction with the group, and then he does save a woman that the prophet shot, but otherwise I'm like, wait. He could have been removed from the book, and we would have lost nothing other than a couple of really great scenes. Yeah, but it didn't tie in. Everything was so interconnected with Arthur. And, I loved learning about Arthur's life and all his wives and all of the really interesting things that happened that was like the counterpoint to this world where nothing works and everything's falling apart and gasoline doesn't work, but somehow rooftops do.
So you could have done with less characters, especially Jeevan. I think it's funny because...
Just him. I was like, I just didn't feel like he tied in as beautifully as the rest of them did, and I really liked the book.
And Mandel used him as an example when I was doing the research on this. She said she mapped it all out, and she was concerned that we saw Jeevan and we didn't see him again until this page, and she created brought him in earlier because she... And it's funny, I think she's sensing that she didn't do enough yet with Jeevan, and by bringing that up. But she was like, I tried, I felt he wasn't in there enough, and so I moved up a section so that we would remember who he was, so he didn't forget who he was. But I think she knew that maybe she had less overall for him in the story, but needed to remind us of who he was. And maybe it didn't work for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So
thanks.
and just to bring it back to something said at the beginning, just as an interesting show of hands, because I have a true belief that it's going to be at least over 20%, how many people in this room know how the internet works? You can raise your hand.
Wait, can I raise it and you won't call on me?
No, I just, every time I come to Books and Bars, they're like, yeah, I'm a developer. All right. I stand corrected.
Hey, I
That's
saw enough
5%.
hands that I'd still sit at the virus table with these people. I saw enough hands There were a few hands. I knew some of them were lying, Marlon, but it's okay. There's enough of you that had your hand up. What was it? But that was about 3%.
Yeah,
though. That wasn't 20%.
It was like 5, maybe.
Do you know how it works,
5%.
Tony?
Enough to know that I would also be
in this group?
looking for those people. But it was really cool. I liked the part where they talked to the computer guy who was like, "Hey, look what I got going here. It's the internet," and everything about that I loved, except what that guy would have done at the end was hand them a CD or a thumb drive and be like, "Give this to the next person you see with the computer on," because they would have at that point fixed all the crap that they hate. You know, I don't know if anybody here has spent a lot of time with system developers and things like that. Oh, yeah, absolutely they would have. They've been like, "I have been dealing with this my entire career, and I'm fixing it. No one will ever use that again."
Okay, I don't think you should be in the same lunchroom with Beverly, though. I don't know that you guys would talk. You'll be next. Go ahead.
I'm Caitlin. I'm about to marry a software developer, so the answer is yes. I spend a lot of time with somebody that wants to fix
Marriage! Marriage!
Marriage, yes. Yeah, we're working on it. But I feel like there's sort of we don't need to divide the history and the technology, and the idea that sort of it's either or. We're going to give up the history and just move forward and let people invent things. I mean, think of how long it took for us to get to the point that we're at technologically. And to think that, you know, in 20 years, even with access to books and knowledge, people aren't going to rebuild that far. So, of course, you need the history. And you're still going to have to figure out how to implement it with different resources and different materials because you don't have the same mass industries producing the things that we need to make our technologies work.
I'm Jessica. I'm going to bring it back to the fact that people are on their phones constantly because I've been on my phone the entire time during this conversation, having a sub-conversation on Twitter with mostly that table and that table.
Wait, hold on. But were you using the hashtag books and bars?
Yeah, we were
Well, then
using
I
the hashtag
completely
books and
sanction
bars.
it. It's okay because then I get to go home and read it later.
So
and then I get to cry a little bit.
I'm going to go ahead and say that my phone and me being on the phone might look really antisocial, but I'm connecting with people a lot more than oh, this is the first time I've gotten the microphone. Oh, and I can't even see Jeff right now. There's a big pole in the way, but I can.
Jeff left. He's not here.
Oh, okay. Woo, ghost Jeff. So I would just like to remind people that folks around the world have started revolutions with their phones, with Facebook. They've created a movement of Black Lives Matter. They've really drawn attention to things that would not have happened and would have been absolutely ignored had Twitter and Facebook not been around. So when you see people on their phones and you think, oh, they're so disconnected to each other because they're on their phones and it's a big barrier, like that's just not the case. I'm sorry, it's just not the case, and not always. Yeah, there's always exceptions to the rule, but like, please like reconsider your judgment of that. It's one of the things that like really bugs me is when people of my parents' generations judge my generation and younger kids for being on their phone all the time. Well, that's what they've grown up with, and that's what they know, and that's how they know how to connect. And it's up to the older generations to try to teach the younger generations how to connect outside of their phones as well. But don't just say like, oh, these girls at the mall, they're not talking to each other.
Hey, I said that. Hold on. Now that part's. Let me explain that part. I use my phone as much as anyone, and I use a hashtag as well as anyone. But let me tell you something. If I'm sitting next to 3 other people, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to look at them, unless I'm like, let me find something out for you, and I'm going to figure that out.
What if they'd been? Okay, no, I'm saying, what if they'd been together for the last 6 hours? What if they just needed a break from each other and they were all going to the same place after this and they just need a little time to go find those magazine articles and those newspaper articles?
You're right. We got to walk a mile in their
Google
clogs.
Race.
I don't know until and who knows? Who knows the situation? Totally fair. I mean, anyone can follow the hashtag books and bars and see that. It's not like I'm some Luddite who's like anti-technology who really wants the apocalypse to come and take it away, but I'm just saying, there's a place and a time, and we got to balance it, right? We have to balance it. And I can't wait to read all the fun stuff that you guys wrote about.
Oh, you
that I
are
didn't
going to
get
be
hear
so
about.
happy with
Because-
some of the puns that Marlon has written.
Oh, puns? I don't know about puns, but we do have a fresh hand right here.
Okay, I just have to reply to your comment. I'm sorry. I took at least 15 people I work with out to dinner one night. I was paying the tab, and they were all on their frickin' phones. And I
How
finally
old
got
were
up,
these people?
And I said, they were all younger than me, much younger than me. And I said, hey, I'm buying your drinks, I'm buying your food, I want to dance, I want to talk, I want to listen to music. Put your phones away,
And they
or I'm
did.
not paying your bill.
And they did.
All the phones disappeared, and we were
request,
dancing in 2 minutes.
You have to make the request, though.
So
But
there's
it's
a time and a place for phones.
There
but
is. No, I'm saying that there has to be that communication as well. Oh my
But
God.
also, okay, to get
right.
off of that, can I just talk about the book one more time?
Yeah, but your daughter wanted to talk too, though. Can we hear what your daughter had to say? She hasn't had a chance yet.
Okay, I was going to go with the character Javan, or however we say his name.
Jeevan.
Jeevan. And maybe his purpose was just that little bit of a bridge we needed from the preparation, or from the initial flu hitting to the 20-year mark where we go next. He kind of just bridged that a little bit, and seeing what it was like in those first 100 days in that apartment and being able to prepare a little bit. And I guess I did kind of wonder what happened to him after a while, but then I was so into the other characters that it didn't really bother me that I had to wait as long as I did to get back to his story. But I think if we would have taken him out, I don't know which one of the other characters she could have used to give us that initial. Someone had to get the call. She kind of had to make it come out some way, and maybe he was just enough that was needed to give us that little bit of. He was the present. You know, we had Arthur's pre-life, we had the afterlife. He was maybe just enough in that little bit to give us what it would have been like in those first few moments. And then a couple more things.
Should I sit down?
Okay, I think going on the cell phone thing, I've gone almost a year without my smartphone. I had it upgraded, dropped it in a cup of coffee, or put it in a cup of coffee a month after having it, and I love almost not having it. I have my old flip phone I activated, and it is very liberating and very refreshing sometimes when I see my husband, our teenage daughter, on their phone, and I have to keep telling them, put it away, can we have dinner? And I read an article about how many people have to have that phone and would go insane if they didn't have it. And after the first month, it really became a life-changing moment.
You know, again, it goes with balance. I would love it if Jessica's table came over here and maybe we saw how easy it was to bribe her to get off her phone. Maybe it's just one nice beer. I mean, it's all good. I think it's interesting. Emily St. John Mandel has said herself that she doesn't like social media. I don't know if she was trying to say that, if that was one of the things she was trying to say with this story, but she said it's something that she wouldn't miss if this apocalypse had happened, and it's one thing that she doesn't really like so much. Just doesn't like that interaction. However, she loves the internet, loves the information, and just the world at your fingertips, that sort of thing. I found it interesting. One of the books we're considering to read for an upcoming month, this author, Mandel, has said she thinks the perfect book is The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which I know some of you have read, and I'm strongly considering it still, and I like seeing those connections between our authors. We are about out of time. I would invite you all to remain social in person or on your phones using the hashtag Books and Bars and continue to talk. But we will be back here next month on August 11th. It's the second Tuesday of the month, and the book is Dear Committee Members by Julie Schumacher. If you're so inclined, you can see Julie talk with us on August 4th in St. Paul at Amsterdam. And then September's book, September 8th, is Go Set a Watchman by Harper Lee. We have plenty of copies for sale here. It just came out a few hours ago, so come on and get it from Ann and Majors and Quinn. I had a great time tonight. Today was feistier than St. Paul. You guys definitely, but we're all still friends. I hope to see you back next month. Thanks a lot and good night.